All right. All right, we're live. Hello, everyone. So, welcome for this session of Rev It Forward. Today, I'm really excited to talk about annual marketing planning because it's a hot topic in the world of marketing and a hot topic for us in terms of where our organization is focused, but then also for you ladies in terms of how you work with your clients. So, Elizabeth, I'm within the sales organization here at Uptempo, and I work with mostly marketing operations teams and, of course, the broader departments in looking at ways to optimize strategic operations and really bring together what we would call the foundation of planning, budgeting, as well as the management of execution. So how are we going to market? How are we ensuring that what we're doing in terms of activities, tactics, et cetera, are aligning with strategic objectives and getting us to where we want to be. Okay, so Cindy, go ahead, introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Cindy Skach. I'm part of Foundations First Marketing, where we have a framework that I strategically guide our clients through with their marketing plans and also serve as a fractional CMO. Our ideal clients are business B2B, and between 10 million and 100 million is the clients that we work with best. And like I said, I love working with the clients and helping them develop their marketing strategy, and really excited for this time of year because I can help them work on their annual planning for next year.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Stacey Danheiser, and I am the founder of Shake Marketing Group. I'm also the host of SOAR Marketing Society, which is a free online community for B2B marketers. And I work with B2B clients primarily kind of in the mid to large enterprise space, helping marketers develop their marketing strategy, their value propositions. I do a lot of customer research to help identify insights and just really overall align the organization from the marketing point of view so that marketing is executing and focused on the tactics that will move the needle the most. I'm also the founder of the Confident Marketer Playbook, and excited to be here to talk about marketing planning 2023.
All right. For some companies, full year 24, it depends on when your fiscal year is kicking off.
True.
But again, today, I think between the three of us, we see a lot of things happening and a lot of organizations and how they approach their annual marketing planning. Some organizations and teams, they look forward to this time of the year. Others, not so much, because it takes a lot of kind of work and aligning the different teams and ensuring that they're setting themselves up for success and being able to deliver the results and performance impact that they're promising the business. So we discussed in terms of the most common pitfalls, but again, we're going to use like these three themes to anchor kind of the conversation today. And so each one of us is most likely going to focus on the one on each portion of it. So again, one of the things that we'll start off with is, again, Stacey, I know you talk a lot about short-term versus long-term, the mindset in terms of how marketing is perceived by the business in terms of wanting to drive results. Again, what those results might be would be obviously getting in front of potential customers, being able to serve and sell to existing customers as well. Marketing's impact on lead development, then converting into specific opportunities pipeline, and of course, then closed revenue. So Cindy, you're going to take it away with this first part, and then we just want to have a conversation about it.
Yeah. So some of the pitfalls that I see with businesses when they're doing their annual planning is focusing more on the tactics and also not being critical about what's working and what's not working with those tactics. So I want to share our framework here that you see on the screen. So this is our Foundations First marketing framework. And the way we look at focusing on the vision, as you see in the center here, the vision of the business, which is focused on a clear vision statement, and then working outwards in this circle to tactics. So if we have a vision statement and we have a direction on where the business wants to go, and everybody understands that's where the business wants to go, you can establish your decisions throughout your marketing plans based on if it's closer to that, getting you closer to that vision, or if there's something else you could be doing that would be better. So I'm going to talk more about that in a second. But as you can see beyond vision here, we have KPIs and core metrics and your budget and your ROI. So obviously you need to set something up that says if your marketing is accountable, and that's where your KPIs come into place to make sure that you're driving something that is supporting your vision. And then for your budget and ROI, before you come up with the tactics, come up with a budget that is going to be sustainable for your business. I've seen so many times with clients that I work with that their budget is their tactics. So whatever their tactics are doing, they'll tell me that's their marketing budget. And, you know, as you can think about this, it could be a mistake going that way because you're not really thinking through on what your plans are. So that's where we like to focus on this framework from that standpoint. As you see in the next circle here, that's where we talk about the fundamentals of what you need to think about from your marketing plan, your marketing strategy. So for example, if you don't have your target markets established effectively, you don't know how to focus on, you don't know who to target for your lead generation, you don't know who to target for your social media, and you might not even know if that's the appropriate way for you to be focusing on your potential customers. The other things to think about is your brand messaging. What are you saying? Is everything aligned with what your sales team is saying to your customers? So you want to make sure that you're aligned in every one of your tactics, whether it's what you're saying on the website, you're saying in your ads, or you're saying on your social media. So these are things to really be thinking about. And I see some of the pitfalls is to not think through all of this and have this established before you start focusing on tactics. So then when you get out to tactics, you can decide which one of those makes sense. You're going to know what to say. You're going to know how to target them. You're going to know where to find them. You're going to have an established cadence between sales and marketing, so you understand what it is that they're hearing from their customers and what's going to resonate. And you want to incorporate that into everything you're saying and what you're doing. So when it comes to annual planning, taking those tactics and really taking a critical look at what's working and what's not working, not from an emotional standpoint, because I see this a lot of times where the CEO might be really interested in everybody doing lead generation or social media, and the marketing teams are focused on doing that just because they know that that's what the CEO wants them to do, but it may not be strategic. So if you're taking a critical view at, okay, this is working, this is not. Sorry if I'm hurting somebody's feelings, but we're talking about a business here, so we need to be focused on that. And a great way to do that is to hire an outside party. If you think it's going to be hard for you to be focused internally, you can hire an outside party that's going to be impartial and do an actual assessment on all these areas. At Foundations First, we do an assessment where we dig into each of these areas. We provide you what's working and what's not working and insights on what the next steps should be. So whether you hire somebody or not, I highly encourage you to look and see what's working, be unemotional about it, and criticize what the opportunities are. That's going to allow you to open the opportunities for what could be working and what the next steps are.
So Cindy, I have a question, just with regards to, again, your focus is working with, like you said, that clients are usually at a certain stage of growth, right? So between that 10, 20. And again, for what it's worth, like a lot of these organizations at that stage of growth are still working through a lot of this. So kind of comparing that with some of the organizations that maybe you've been part of before, or Stacey, the ones that you work with, or certainly the ones that I collaborate with, they're much further down or further evolved in their growth. And so a lot of these things in terms of understanding their target, markets, understanding their personas, understanding the value proposition, not just as an account or a prospect, but as individual titles are concerned, right? Because depending on your product or solution you offer, you're going to have different value propositions for each one of those titles or personas. But not to say, like, even those organizations, I still find that, again, they are going to rush out of those inner circles and just want to do the things that are probably on the periphery first, before really establishing that core and those foundational aspects. All that to say, whether you're small or you're big, same problems will arise depending on, regardless of the stage of growth.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we see it more in the smaller businesses, and it's easy to think as a bigger organization that they wouldn't fall into these pitfalls, but it does happen. It does happen if you don't have somebody in the organization focusing on, wait a minute, is this the right thing to do? And do we have a decision? Do we have a litmus test to go through? So for example, in the scenario I talked about, is making sure that you have a vision statement that you can determine. So there isn't this, I say emotional all the time. There isn't an emotional decision. It's more of like, this is going to drive our business forward. This is going to help us get to where our goals are. And this is how we can hold it accountable. And always looking at that data to see how that's happening. And going back to that middle circle there, if it's not working, if something's not working with your lead generation, if you have the right KPI set, you can determine that pretty quickly. And then you go back and say, okay, why is it not working? Let's go back to that inner circle and let's look at our messaging. Let's look at our target markets. And it gives you a framework to be able to do that. And this is applicable, like you said, Elizabeth, it's applicable for all business sizes. It's still the fundamentals of marketing.
So, Stacey, curious, like, what have you seen are the contributing factors to, like, the struggles a lot of these companies experience or encounter when trying to build out these, whether they're KPIs or OKRs? I know you just posted something about abbreviation. Funny.
Buzzword bingo.
Yeah. Like, what's so difficult about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I think that the problem actually gets magnified as the organization grows, because now all of a sudden you have people who are responsible for maybe one little part of this triangle or one little circle on here. So somebody that is maybe just responsible for the website, who's really disconnected from how we got to where we are, or somebody who's just responsible for brand messaging, but that doesn't necessarily get to see how this comes to life in every single tactic. And so as the organization grows, you get more opinions, you get more separated. And the biggest challenge I see, and when I work with clients, is that marketing is just really disconnected from the customer. So, having the responsibility to build a marketing plan, but then not having the authority or the connection to the customers puts marketing really at a disadvantage, because now you're battling internal opinions on what the sales team thinks you should do, and the CEO and the product team and everybody else kind of fighting for marketing dollars, but you don't really have a guiding light or principle or something to go back to that is a reminder that why we're doing this in the first place, which is to connect with customers and to grow the business via adding more customers or selling more to existing customers. And so that's the piece I think that this becomes, as marketing has become more and more siloed and focused on tactics, they have lost that connection to purpose and why the business is existing in the first place.
And I imagine too, right? It's, again, using the term misalignment, because as again, as organizations expand and grow and their teams, they're developing out metrics for their own respective teams and departments that like don't actually flow into like one common or overarching one. And so, you know, you'll find that we're all kind of like moving in a direction that we think is the same, but because we're trying to meet these like milestones, or we're trying to meet these KPIs, if we don't understand how it impacts other teams, then I think that makes for a lot of chaos.
Pain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Sorry. Cindy, go ahead.
I was going to say, yes, absolutely chaos. And then in addition, I mean, you're wasting time and money on something that's not impactful to the business.
Yeah. Okay. So what direction do we want to take now? Because I know that ultimately, one of the things, Stacey, you're wanting to focus on is the tendency to build plans in silos, or very kind of on individual basis, not individual like as a person, but almost as a team, right? So what do we say? I'll stop sharing my screen and let you share yours.
Yes. So, I mean, I want to, take a step back and let's talk about the elephant in the room, which I found this thing yesterday. Let me see if I can share it here real quick. I don't know. Did you guys see this thing that I posted yesterday? Which is all about who owns marketing plans.
Yes. I love that.
So, I mean, this is interesting, and I think something worth talking about. And I don't know if anybody's even on or listening to us, but would love to know in the chat, if people are there, who in your organization is responsible for putting together the marketing strategy. So this was a study that Deloitte did, and they found that, and this was surprising to me, only 46% of organizations say that the CMO is responsible for developing the marketing strategy. A shockingly high number thought the sales team should be putting the marketing plan together, 10%, and 3% said the CFO, which I have worked personally for a CFO who's put in charge of marketing, who wanted us to build the plan, and I would say that was difficult.
One thing that I'll say to that is ultimately, right, in order to execute on these strategic priorities, we need to be able to invest in these efforts, right? So I think, and marketing and finance alignment is something that we talk a lot about, and so I can see how, like that 3%. Could be dictated with the fact that like marketing will very much build out their plans and the strategies they want to execute on based on what they're being given, or the allowances that they're being given by finance. So it'll dictate for the most part what they're able and not able to do.
Yeah, I think that's exactly. I think there's kind of two different approaches. So when I worked in corporate marketing for several different Fortune 500 companies, so the planning process was very formal. We were given a template, we were given deadlines, we were given reviews and milestones and check marks to basically put together the plan, present the plan, and then it would kind of they would go away and then get approved on the plan. So my approach always to that process was twofold. One, to put together almost like a wish list, right? Of here's looking at the data of what we did last year. Here's what worked. Here's what did not work. And then I would look at, which we'll talk about in a minute, the objectives of the business and what everybody else wanted to achieve, and then go build the plan kind of and put it in a ranking order, in a prioritization order, so that if finance came back and said, thank you very much for your $1 million request, we cannot give you $1 million, we have $800,000, I knew the bottom sort of tier of stuff that I would just automatically cut because it was already in priority order. So what I wanted to share was, I wanted to just talk about this because I was a little surprised by, less than 50% of companies say that marketing should own the marketing strategy, which it's literally in the definition, marketing strategy. So it's really just shocking. Yet another example of like something else that's being taken away from marketing and put somewhere else in the organization. So marketers really need to focus on getting this part right. So the other piece that I always did when putting together plans, and I still do this now, in my work and I advise, I do a lot of mentorship and coaching with individuals on how to build internal alignment. It's actually a really big pain point that that companies and marketers are experiencing because, and especially in like a growing or scaling organization, the chances that the marketing person who's putting together this plan, that they are working for and having to communicate with a non-marketer is very high. They're working maybe like, let's say, for a chief revenue officer who generally grew up in the sales organization, or they're working for a CEO directly. And so they have to be able to, communicate to that individual. And so I want to focus, this is the Confident Marketer Playbook. And this is typically what I help my students go through, and the people that are part of our community. And I want to focus, there's 9 steps to this. Everybody wants to start with step 8, which is what Cindy just mentioned, kind of that outer ring of all the tactics. Let's just start executing, and we're going to skip all these other steps, and they're not important. Marketers are expected really to know how to do every single one of these. But when you're in the process of building the plan, where do you start? So I want to just talk about maybe the first 2 or 3, the first 3 steps here. So step number 1 is really doing a personal self-assessment. So what are your individual strengths? What are the potential gaps or weaknesses on the team? If you work on a team, this is a really great exercise to do, to look across the scope of the team to figure out, do we have gaps in competency issues potentially that were going to prevent us from executing on this plan that we want? So, again, marketing job descriptions read like they're searching for a unicorn. Everybody's expected to be data-driven and also creative, and also, award-winning video producer, and also an expert salesperson, and also a revenue generator. And so it's like a million different things that this one individual is supposed to be. But especially
now, right? Like given the environment and climate, right? And layoffs happening, and teams, we have to do more with less. So yeah, unicorn is it.
Yes. So I like to start with this self-assessment, and I go in and help teams kind of figure this out. Do we have complementary skills? What are the gaps that might exist here from a competency standpoint? And how do we round this whole team out? So we'll have a whole separate session on what those competencies are later, but it's all kind of based on our book that I co-wrote with Simon Kelly and Paul Johnston called Standout Marketing. And we are in the process of launching a self-assessment tool where you can go through this on your own. Otherwise, right now, we're kind of just doing it for individuals. So that's kind of step 1, is to get realistic about where your gaps are. And then the second is really to audit your existing marketing plan. So this goes back to, and I think, Elizabeth, you're going to talk about data and how do we actually gather data and how do we interpret data. That's kind of step 1 of this. The other piece to it, though, and why we talk about a common pitfall in marketing planning, is that marketing builds the plan in a silo. And really, like, pro tip is to get outside of your marketing bubble and to talk to other people in the organization who are your stakeholders in the plan. And this is something that might be counterintuitive, right? Because you think, well, it's the marketing plan, we own the marketing plan, nobody else really needs to influence it. However, I kind of found out the hard way working in corporate that there are very loud and vocal stakeholders, typically on the sales organization, who will directly influence your plan. But then there are other stakeholders that might be kind of the quiet and silent influencers behind the scenes, such as your product organization. And so, like as an example, product folks are typically given a very specific number, a P&L that they need to grow their product by. Well, product doesn't own the sales organization, and product doesn't own the marketing organization. So they are an influencer into how the marketing budgets get spent and how the sales attention is being directed at their products. And so when you work in an organization that sells multiple products, all of a sudden you can see that becomes complicated, because we don't advocate to do a whole bunch of different product campaigns throughout the year. We want to do customer focused campaigns. So what I recommend, kind of to avoid the situation where you are building a plan that then later gets completely derailed, is to set up formal interviews with your internal stakeholders. So to actually make this a formal process. Even if your organization does not think of marketing planning as a formal process, you can make it formal for yourself. So you identify, the people that you need to talk to. Let's say it's your CEO, the CFO, the head of product, the head of sales. If you don't have sales in your organization,
let's not forget customer success.
I love talking to customer success and operations, or somebody kind of on the post value chain. And you basically set these up as formal interviews, and you talk through, like I like to actually just ask them questions as it relates to this framework. So you would say, what do we know? How do we get customer information? How confident are we in the data that we have about our customers and the insights that we have about our customers? What are we doing for competitor information? Who owns that? Right? Kind of start going through the tactics there. Who would you say is our ideal customer target? Which segment should we be focused on this year? And really at this time, what you're looking for is to kind of gather all of that information. And one thing that you really want to do is, like, do we actually have alignment? So you're trying to figure out internally, if we are not all on the same page, it's going to be impossible for us to show up consistently in the marketplace, right? We're going to be confusing the market if we can't even internally align ourselves. So going through here, asking about goals and objectives. What is the sales organization trying to achieve? How much emphasis, for example, are they putting on getting new customers, new logos, versus growing the existing customer base? And if they're not focused on growing the existing customer base, why not? Is it because, if we only sell one product and we have no upsells and we have no services to offer, then maybe that makes sense. But if you are selling more than one product, if you're selling professional services, if you have, upgrades or add-ons, how might that look, and how might your marketing plan be directed to fit within what the organization is trying to achieve? So typically, this is really tight alignment with the sales team and understanding how they are hiring new people. Is it by geography? Is it to bring in customer kind of segment or vertical experts? And really getting a big understanding of what those goals are. Value proposition, same thing. Are we all aligned on the message? What is our value proposition in the market? How differentiated are we? When's the last time we validated this? And, what are the proof points that we actually have that this thing is true and accurate and working? And then this pink section over here, we kind of get into like wish list stuff. So I like to ask the question about, what type of content is everybody using? What do they wish they had? What would video be helpful? Or would a checklist be helpful? Or let's take customer success as an example. Marketing tends to be uninvolved as it relates to customer onboarding, as it relates to ongoing customer communications, as it relates to little video snippets or training on how to actually use or implement the service. But the thing that I have found, because I work with companies kind of throughout this whole sort of value chain is that the people who are now responsible for onboarding and training and ongoing customer communication, they're not communication experts and they're not marketers. And so you have this huge disconnect with operations people typically running communications. And so I have worked with organizations who have, given me a stack of, well, here's our onboarding guide. And the first 3 pages are all acronyms, that the customer needs to know to work with them. And then there's a whole page of how complicated, you need to go through the system and to place an order. And it's just, the whole thing could be really simplified with marketing coming in to help, and especially looking at customer churn. And if people are leaving and if they're not fully implementing your product, that means they're not getting value from it. That means they're eventually going to leave because they're going to say, well, I can get this probably somewhere else, or somebody else is doing it better or easier. So really kind of diving deep into what the content needs are, and not just, that beginning part of the funnel, which sales will have great ideas for, but kind of throughout the whole journey. And then finally, kind of on the execution side, this is an opportunity, I think, for marketers to really educate their internal stakeholders. Again, we're going through this interview process and we're talking about their wish list. And this is really an opportunity to say, well, do you know what it takes to execute something like that? Because I have found that a lot of non-marketers are impatient because they don't really fully understand the creative process. They've never written something, they've never published anything, they've never created anything. And they expect it to take, 2 hours. Meanwhile, it takes 2 weeks or 2 months because there's a lot of people involved and maybe the back and forth. And so this is just an opportunity to kind of have that dialogue about prioritization and execution resources that would be needed to really do this thing right. And then finally, this last bucket here, C-suite alignment. The whole purpose of kind of doing those interviews internally and getting people to collaborate with you on the plan is to ultimately get their buy-in so that you are directing the plan and how you're spending your time and your attention, versus the business constantly coming to you and you feeling like an order taker because the CEO now has another idea, or the sales team now has another idea, or the product team has an idea, or the customer success team has an idea. If you go through the process and actually build out your plan and you have gotten input along the way, now it feels like it's a collaborative process where you've gotten the buy-in. And, I always advise for people to bake about 80% of their plan and leave about 20% open for opportunities that may arise. So as new things come up, or let's say there's a new customer segment that we want to go after, or there's an acquisition that happens, or something, one of our competitors went out of business, like all of a sudden it becomes an opportunity that you could not have foreseen or planned. You kind of divert some of your time and your attention and your budget to those opportunities. So that's kind of one way to avoid that.
And I mean, everything that you're talking about right here in this one slide, there's obviously, this needs to be sorted out when we're like ramping up for a new year to execute, right? Go to market. But this is, I think from me, I'm thinking like, this is very much like a go to market strategy, which is not going to be like, hey, we're Jan 1 to December 31st. So we should start thinking about this in September. Like, this is a continuous iterative process that happens. And I think that marketing and sales, like revenue functions, just by way of the market dynamics and our our prospects buying behaviors changing, like we've definitely gone into more of a reactive versus proactive mode.
Yeah.
And which makes it
exactly. I mean, this is really, in my view, kind of the job of the marketer, right? The marketer, especially somebody who has a title the head of marketing or somebody that is director of marketing, where you're not part of an organization that has 50 other marketers, you're really expected to do all of this. And whether you bring in other people to kind of help you make assessments or you do your own, this is really what the business is looking for, and what the business is saying. We want marketing to own the plan. We want to feel confident in the plan, and we want it to be directed at our goals and to help us get customers, break through the clutter, help us stand out in our market and be the authority. And so all of this really is kind of the foundation of kind of that confident marketer. I want to share, I don't know if I can share this or how to, but I have a scorecard, kind of self-assessment that you can go through. It's free to see how you stack up on the confident marketer. And it'll identify just for you, like, okay, are there some opportunities maybe that I need to focus on one of these buckets over the other, and to help you just figure out kind of where your attention is. And if you're interested, please reach out, because we can also do this assessment kind of at a company level, just, quickly having your other stakeholders take the assessment, the scorecard, and see, wow, what's the, you're going to give your perception of your own self versus your peers or your stakeholders' perception of how marketing is being run. So it's a very telling, yes. Well, exactly. I think those are always very telling, and that helps, again, build that alignment. That's kind of, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do here is to build alignment and to make people feel like they have ownership of their plan and that they are in charge of directing their plan, versus sort of the other side of that, feeling like an order taker. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that feeling. So that's the goal.
No, absolutely, which is a good segue, I guess, into kind of our next, pillar, which is data, right? And technology and all the tools out there to help enable marketing organizations and teams actually execute on marketing. And this is where the conversations that we have within our organization with our customers and prospective customers is that there's been such a focus on technologies to help on the execution side of marketing. So, your CRMs, your marketing automation tools, your attribution tools, etc. But when we think about it, there's really never been anything to help marketing run the business of marketing. And when we say the business of marketing, it really comes down to, hey, we have a plan. We need these dollars to invest in those plans and what we want to do. And from there, how are we ensuring that we're following the dollar and ensuring that every investment and anything spent in marketing tactics or activities is actually delivering that ROI? And I know, again, from the abbreviation standpoint, ROI tends to be thrown around a lot, right? Especially when we come down and we're talking to our finance partners, right? FP&A, they really want to say, hey, if I give you $100,000, what type of return are we looking at potentially? Which kind of brings into like where our focus is. And when we think about all of this happening at a very high level, where we're doing all of, let's say we're an organization and we're doing everything that you've just outlined, Stacey, and now we actually have to build the plans, or actually, no, first we have to establish what our strategic priorities are, our KPIs, our OKRs, etc. And then from there, we have to be able to cascade those down to our different teams and what it means for them from an execution perspective. The disadvantage for a lot of these organizations, especially the ones that are kind of in the segment that I and my teams work with, like that 100 million to $1 billion in annual revenue, is that they have really comprehensive and complex marketing tech stacks, like, upwards of 50, 60 tools that they're using to execute on marketing. But yet the foundation, everything that we're trying to build on top, is still being done predominantly manual in a series of different systems or spreadsheets that ultimately are not able to connect the dots. So this is where we start driving the conversation around, hey, what does strategic marketing planning, investing, and performance management look like? And so let me just share my screen real quick. Okay. All right, everyone can see my screen? Okay, awesome. So when we think about, especially like the customers and the organizations we work with, right? Like, obviously the foundational piece is the planning. And then as like looking at these 4 pillars: plan, invest, execute, and improve. Because a lot of the companies out there are, their marketing organizations are very segmented, whether they're by region. Right? First, they're obviously cross-functional in terms of their focus. So we have your demand generation teams, you have your digital marketing teams, you have your marketing ops teams, field events, etc. Everyone is doing their job, but everything they're doing on a daily basis is very much, they're unable to connect to the high-level strategic priorities that have been set as an organization. And so what we found is that organizations that are able to centralize their strategic planning are miles ahead. And so we think about just looking at a hierarchy or a structure in terms of how organizations are able to showcase or to visualize how their marketing teams are going to market. For us, the structure is really important. The hierarchy is really important, because when we think about the data, number one priority right now for marketing, especially marketing operations teams, they have so many technologies that they're working with, collating so much data that a lot of that data sits in silos, disconnected, and essentially providing a holistic picture. So what we say, number one, when you're building your strategic objectives or priorities, where are those being documented or cataloged? Usually they're in a series of spreadsheets, PowerPoints, maybe, internal systems, SharePoint, etc. And so when it comes down to now we have to build out our campaigns, activities, tactics, etc., how do we know what we're doing and how is it connected to ABC priority? And so ensuring that organizations have a place where plans can live, but also be connected to the strategic priorities of the business is really critical. Excuse me. Now, when we think about how plans and budget, so you build your plans and then you go to the business and you say, okay, last year we had this amount of marketing budget. Now we need a 20% increase based on what we were able to achieve last year. A lot of these companies, unfortunately, when they go to make the case that they require an additional percentage of budget increase, they're unable to confidently go to the business and say, we were able to achieve this. Now, because by nature, a lot of information, critical information, like how each campaign, tactic, initiative is being funded, what you'll get is companies marketing leadership that end up saying, we underspent X amount of dollars, or we overspent, which, if you're kind of a late stage growth company, right, and even like a publicly traded company, that's not great, because again, your finance organization needs you to forecast accurately where you are and where you're going to land. So if a CMO says, hey, next quarter, we're going to be spending this amount of money. And by our projections, we can see that we can create or impact this X amount of revenue or pipeline. If they can't show the data and the reporting, then next time they go to ask for more dollars, they're probably going to be laughed out of the room. I don't know. I mean, maybe not, but ultimately, like, a CFO is going to be very hesitant to give a marketing organization more dollars when they weren't able to show or optimize or maximize the dollars that they were given the previous year, et cetera. So when we think about, you get, like, a lot of these organizations are building other plans and allocating budget, either like top down or bottoms up, et cetera. When we have, like, our customers who are leveraging a solution like ours to automate and digitize and connect plans, budgets, and actually be able to connect to the greater tech stack, like bringing in performance data out of a Salesforce, or bring in other data sets from a marketing automation tool. In addition to being able to have the flexibility and the functionality to connect to financial systems, so that in real time, that head of marketing has the visibility to say, okay, where are we at? So my full year investment target, for example, was $625K. Right now, I know that my teams are on track, right, to spend X amount of dollars. Most likely, if they see that they're not tracking well, they're underspending, that's going to mean that they have to make really quick decisions of, like, where that next investment is going to be made. And so one of the things that we see in a lot of our customers right now, and again, a lot of marketing organizations, same thing, the majority of their budgets are going to be spent in digital. So really understanding, like, if we are investing in specific digital channels, whether that be Google Ads, LinkedIn, et cetera, Twitter, Bing, whatever, do we have the visibility to see how those channels are performing? And so when we think about ROI, or how, the industry considers ROI, forever, it's been a matter of results, right? So we know that we have been able to influence X amount of pipeline, let's say. That's the return. But we can't marry the R with the I, because a lot of the times, and this is why I have a job and working with these companies, is because that I is so difficult to see. They don't know how they made the decisions to invest in specific tactics, activities, or initiatives. And so when we think about those organizations that are struggling to say, when asked, hey, what is the return on investment for that event, or for that trade show, or for that webinar? If you can't actually come up with what all of your costs associated and all that spend associated, it's going to be very hard to give the business an accurate picture of that return or anticipated return. Anything comes up from both of you? Like, I just maybe need a break.
I mean, I love how you're able to connect the dots here, that where there tends to be a lot of ambiguity where you're helping them connect the dots, you're helping them understand what the investment is, and be more strategic about where their spend is. Yeah. So I think it's great.
Yeah. And yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Stacey.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, one of the things that we always talk about, which I really love a tool like this for, is running those what if scenarios. So we talk about marketers need to experiment. Marketers need to do pilot projects, right? And I think this helps to maybe paint the picture a little bit for people about what that could look like and what the risk is associated with the pilot project, right? So we might already kind of visualize it in our head and feel like it's going to work. This, I think, is the other sort of side to show people here's how this could play out, right? And even running like a couple different scenarios to say, you know, worst case, middle case, best case scenario, here's what we could expect from a pilot project versus kind of going all in and you know, making a dramatic investment or change initiative. So
absolutely. And what I see really quite often is that the companies that are within my purview, they are dispersed globally, right, and regionally. So what happens is, you know, you'll have a marketing team segmented, right, again, in those domains, functional areas, field, digital, demand gen, but regionally, right? So what you'll see is that the decentralization of this type of work, right, and saying like, if we don't give the visibility and we don't have consistency around how all our teams are planning and managing their budgets and spend, how can we possibly understand at a bird's eye level if I should go and invest more strategically in the APAC area or in the EMEA area? If I see that there are specific channels that are underperforming in my North American market, I imagine a CMO would really love to be able to see in real time, like, hey, if we shifted $250,000 from the North American team, whatever team that is, and move it to this other regional team, what are some of the outcomes that we could anticipate? And listen, honestly, like, we're at about what, like 9,000 plus marketing technology or tools and solutions that our marketing friends have at their disposal. And Excel and Google Docs, for the most part, have served us well, right? But for different purposes. But not anymore. Not in the terms of how we see these market dynamics. They're changing. Reporting, right? You know, expectations to be able to, you know, at a drop of a hat, you're a CMO and you're pulled into a meeting with your CEO and your CFO, and they're like, hey, we need to know this, this, and this. And guess what? A lot of that information that is going to be used to create those reports and provide those insights to that team is living all over the place. And it's taking them a lot of time, resources, and human capital to maintain these manual processes. So the conversations that we have is not that, hey, we're going to be helping you automate and getting you out of Excel. Yes, that is going to be one thing that will happen, but essentially it's the implications of continuing to manage, you know, things like plans and budgets in spreadsheets. It's the implications of that. It's the time lost. It's the lack of visibility to make quick, strategic, again, data-driven decisions. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of the, and again, this is really what we position as foundational, right? Like, again, marketing teams, and especially the MOPS teams that we work with, historically are so overwhelmed, right? And they have a problem, they have a challenge, and there are a lot of bright, shiny tools out there that they're like, okay, that looks good, maybe we should do that. Excuse me. But if they cannot socialize or communicate the use case above and beyond just on how they're executing within their mandates, it just makes it much more difficult, right, to actually create change or you know, adopt that digital transformation mentality. Yeah, so I mean, again, a lot to uncover and unpack, but when we think about digital transformation and the companies that are being forced or being positioned to move in that direction, we're seeing a lot more companies adopt this type of tool to automate things like the planning, the budgeting, the spend management. And we feel like it's a really critical component to any marketing organization's go-to-market.
Yep. Great. I love it.
Agreed.
So can you tell I'm the one salesperson on this?
Oh, we all have to be salespeople.
Yeah. So like any last thoughts or any sort of like, final pieces of advice or thoughts just as all these teams are heading into annual planning. And again, I know Stacey, we're big fans of what can we do like today, like what can we do tomorrow, and not like in a very abstract way say, great. What are some of the things that they can do now to start creating that change or make that pivot?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the one thing I would say, just a final piece of advice, and we talked about this a little bit, is to make time to do the planning. Everybody wants to put all their resources into execution, and especially as marketers, we have very long lists of things to do, and there's no shortage of fires to put out. But the planning requires kind of a different part of your brain. And it's not just the satisfaction. You don't write like one item on your to-do list, make marketing plan, right? Because that's going to sit there for maybe like a little bit of time, and you're going to get frustrated with that. So I would say my one piece of advice is to make time to do the plan. It pays off. And there's a bunch of different, opinions about this. Like, we don't need a marketing plan. And I'm not suggesting that it's, a 150-page document that you have to put together or anything elaborate. You can even literally put this in a Word document or the one-page marketing plan. But the reality is you need to be able to answer these questions and to make sure that you have alignment on all of those different areas so that it just infinitely makes your job easier and better and your results of your marketing programs exponentially higher. So that's what I would say is my one thing to do today. Go into your calendar, block off time to start the process, because it's going to be probably a little bit longer than you expect, especially if you're doing what I suggest on the internal alignment. Those interviews and talking to everybody and getting feedback takes a little bit of time. So start now so that you're not kind of blindsided when the plan is expected.
Time well spent.
And I would add on to that. All of that was great. I think we've all seen, or Stacey and I have seen, if the pitfalls, if you don't do the annual planning, like you said, it takes time. It's hard to get past all the day-to-day stuff. But if you don't do the annual planning and you don't think through all this, you're just going to keep running and doing the same thing you've been doing. You don't even know if it's effective yet. So by taking the time, making a plan, identifying what's working and what's not working, and being, again, honest, not emotional about that, factual about what is working and what's not working, and then putting that together. And I agree with you, Stacey. It doesn't have to be a robust plan. It could be just something in a Word document, but taking the time to do it. And it's not something that's going to happen in an hour. It's going to be something that's going to be collaborative of the different departments. Whether you're a very small business or a larger business, you need to get all the information from each department.
Yeah. All right. Well, Thank you very much, ladies. It was great connecting, and see you on the other side.
All right.
Bye. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Bye.
Bye.